Michael Harrington stared at the stack of mail on the kitchen counter, his hand hovering over the cream-colored envelope with the law firm's return address. The afternoon sun streamed through the bay windows of the suburban Chicago home he'd shared with Rebecca for 23 years. He'd been avoiding this moment for 3 days, ever since the envelope arrived. "Just open it," he muttered to himself, snatching it up and tearing along the seam. The letter inside was brief, formal, and devastating. Rebecca had filed for divorce. Michael sank onto a kitchen stool, the paper trembling in his hands. They'd argued more frequently over the past year, sure. The empty nest had left a void neither seemed to know how to fill after their youngest, Emma, left for college. But divorce? The word felt foreign, impossible. Just last weekend they'd shared a bottle of wine on the back deck, planning a trip to Maine for their anniversary. He reached for his phone and dialed Rebecca's number. She'd moved into her sister's guest house 3 weeks ago, saying she needed space to think. Michael had believed her. After 4 rings, her voicemail picked up. He hung up without leaving a message, then tried again. Same result. "Dad? What's wrong?" Michael turned to see his daughter Emma standing in the doorway, home unexpectedly from college. At 20, she had her mother's amber eyes and his stubborn chin. The concern on her face made him quickly fold the letter. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just surprised to see you. Didn't know you were coming home this weekend." Emma dropped her backpack on the floor. "Mom invited me. Said she had something important to tell me and Jason." She glanced at the envelope on the counter. "Is that from her lawyer?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "You knew? About the divorce? Mom's been talking about it for months." Emma's expression shifted from concern to confusion. "Wait, you didn't know? She said you two had discussed it, that it was mutual." Michael stood up, unsteady. "Mutual? Emma, this is the first I'm hearing of it." He held up the letter. She never mentioned divorce. Not once. Emma's phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked back at her father with guilty eyes. "It's Mom. She's waiting for me at Aunt Diane's. I should go." "No, wait." Michael struggled to find the right words. "Call your brother. Tell him to meet us there. Your mother doesn't get to control this narrative." The drive to Diane's house in Evanston was tense. Emma sat silently in the passenger seat, periodically checking her phone. Michael gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing through recent months, searching for signs he'd missed. There had been changes, certainly. Rebecca had joined a hiking club, started taking photography classes. He'd been supportive, happy she was finding new interests. Had he been blind to what was really happening? "She seems different lately," Emma said quietly. "Happier, maybe. I thought it was her new hobbies." Michael said nothing. The suburban landscape blurred past his window as he accelerated slightly. By the time they pulled into Diane's driveway, Jason's beat-up Corolla was already parked on the street. Michael's son, 23 and recently graduated, stood awkwardly on the front lawn with Rebecca and Diane. The tension was palpable as Michael approached. "What are you doing here?" Rebecca asked, her voice tight. "Our children deserve the truth," Michael said. "And so do I." Rebecca's face hardened. "Let's not do this outside." She led them into Diane's living room, a space Michael had visited countless times for family gatherings and holidays. Now it felt like hostile territory. Once they were all seated, Rebecca took a deep breath. "I wanted to tell the kids first, to explain things properly before blindsiding me with divorce papers." Michael interrupted. "We've been together for 25 years, Rebecca. I deserved a conversation." "I tried having that conversation for years," Rebecca said, her voice rising. "You never listened. You were always too busy with work, too preoccupied. I've been unhappy for a long time." Jason shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, you always said everything was fine when I asked. Because I was trying to protect you both." Rebecca's eyes welled with tears. "I didn't want to burden you with my problems. So instead you lied," Emma said flatly. "To all of us." Rebecca flinched. "I didn't lie. I just waited for the right time." Michael leaned forward. "The right time would have been before contacting a lawyer, before telling our children, before deciding our marriage was over without giving me a chance to fix things." "There's nothing to fix," Rebecca said quietly. "I don't love you anymore, Michael." The room fell silent. Michael felt as though the floor had given way beneath him. "There's something else," Rebecca said, looking at her hands. "I've met someone. David. He's in my photography class." The revelation hit Michael like a physical blow. "How long?" 6 months, Rebecca admitted. "But that's not why I'm leaving." The marriage was over long before David. Jason stood up suddenly. I can't believe this. You're having an affair and still trying to claim the moral high ground. It's not an affair, Rebecca insisted. Your father and I have been roommates for years, not partners. That's not true, Michael said, his voice breaking. I thought we were happy. I loved you. I still love you. You love the idea of me, Rebecca said. The woman who handled everything at home while you built your career. The woman who never complained, who always supported you. That's not me anymore. I want more. Emma looked between her parents, tears streaming down her face. Did you ever think about what this would do to us? To our family. Rebecca reached for her daughter's hand, but Emma pulled away. You're adults now. You have your own lives. So that makes it okay to blow up the foundation of our lives. Jason asked bitterly. Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, what happens to those? We'll figure it out, Rebecca said. Plenty of families do. Michael stood, unable to stay in that room any longer. I need some air. He walked out to Diane's backyard, where he and Rebecca had celebrated their 20th anniversary just 3 years earlier. The garden was in full bloom, indifferent to the destruction happening inside. A few minutes later, Jason joined him. Dad, I'm sorry. Michael nodded, unable to speak. Did you really not see this coming? His son asked carefully. No, Michael admitted. I thought we were just going through a rough patch. Empty nest and all that. I never imagined she'd. He couldn't finish the sentence. Jason put a hand on his father's shoulder. What are you going to do? Michael stared. At the garden, at the life he thought he had. I don't know. I honestly don't know. The family gathering for Thanksgiving at Emma's small apartment in Wicker Park felt like a poorly rehearsed play where no one remembered their lines. 3 months had passed since Rebecca's revelation, and the divorce was proceeding with cold efficiency. Michael sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, nursing a glass of scotch while Rebecca chatted with Emma in the kitchen, their voices a low murmur barely audible over the football game Jason pretended to watch. This is ridiculous, Jason muttered, muting the TV. We're acting like we don't all want to scream. Michael sighed. It's one day. We can make it through one day for your sister's sake. Emma had insisted on hosting, determined to maintain some semblance of family tradition despite everything. At 20, she was trying desperately to be the glue holding them together, a role Michael knew she shouldn't have to play. The doorbell rang, and Emma hurried to answer it. Michael's stomach tightened as David entered, carrying a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers. He was younger than Michael had expected, maybe early 40s, with salt and pepper hair and the confident posture of someone comfortable in his own skin. Sorry I'm late, David said, kissing Rebecca on the cheek before extending his hand to Michael. Traffic was brutal coming from Evanston. Michael shook his hand briefly, noticing the expensive watch on David's wrist. So this was the man his wife had chosen over their 25 years together. This stranger who taught photography and lived in Evanston. David brought his famous apple pie, Rebecca announced with forced cheer. It won a ribbon at the farmer's market last year. How nice, Michael said flatly. I didn't realize photography teachers were also master bakers. Rebecca shot him a warning look. Actually, photography is just a passion. David runs his own architectural firm. Mostly small residential projects, David added modestly. Nothing fancy. Jason snorted. Right. That's why you drive a Tesla. Jason, Emma hissed. Not today, please. The tension in the room was suffocating. Emma busied herself setting the table, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged the silverware. Can I help with anything? David asked, clearly trying to ease the awkwardness. You've done enough, Jason muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Rebecca placed her hand on David's arm. Why don't you open the wine? Michael watched their easy familiarity with a pain that felt physical. He'd moved into a small apartment near his office downtown, a temporary solution that was beginning to feel permanent. The house in the suburbs was on the market, another piece of their shared life being dismantled. Dinner's ready, Emma announced. Dad, could you carve the turkey? It was a small gesture, but Michael recognized it for what it was, Emma's attempt to honor his place in the family. He took the carving knife with a grateful nod. As they gathered around Emma's small dining table, the conversation remained stilted and superficial. Weather, traffic, Jason's new job at a tech startup. No one dared venture into more dangerous territory. Until Rebecca said, we should discuss Christmas plans. David and I were thinking of renting a cabin in Wisconsin. The knife in Michael's hand paused mid-slice. Christmas has always been at our house. Which is for sale, Rebecca reminded him gently. Things are different now. They don't have to be completely different, Michael insisted. We can still maintain some traditions for the kids. We're not kids anymore, Dad, Jason said, his voice tight. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to do Christmas this year. Maybe I'll go to Cancun with friends. Emma looked stricken. But we've never spent Christmas apart. Well, things change, Jason said, glaring at his mother. Isn't that right, Mom? Rebecca set down her fork. This isn't easy for anyone, Jason. But we can find new ways to celebrate as a family. Are we still a family? Jason challenged. Because it feels like you chose your happiness over ours. That's not fair, Rebecca said. I spent decades putting everyone else first. I deserve to think of myself for once. By cheating, Jason's voice rose. By lying to all of us. David cleared his throat uncomfortably. Maybe I should step out for a bit. No, stay, Jason said bitterly. You're family now, right? That's what Mom keeps saying. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Please, can we just have one meal without fighting? Michael set down the carving knife. Jason, that's enough. Your mother made her choice. We all have to live with it. How can you be so calm about this? Jason demanded. She destroyed our family, and you're just accepting it? What would you have me do? Michael asked, suddenly exhausted. Beg her to come back? Force her to stay in a marriage she doesn't want? Rebecca looked at him with surprise. It was the first time he'd acknowledged her decision without bitterness. I don't forgive what happened, Michael continued. But I'm trying to move forward. For my sake, and for you kids. A heavy silence fell over the table. Emma wiped her eyes with her napkin, while Jason stared at his plate, jaw clenched. David spoke up quietly. I know I'm an outsider here, and I can't imagine how difficult this is for all of you. But I care about Rebecca, and I want to respect your family bonds. I'm not trying to replace anyone. Good, because you can't, Jason said, but some of the heat had left his voice. The remainder of the meal passed in relative calm, though the conversation never fully recovered. As they cleared the dishes, Emma pulled Michael aside. Are you really okay, Dad? She asked. You seem different. Michael considered the question. I'm getting there. I started seeing a therapist. It's helping me understand some things. Emma looked relieved. That's good. I've been so worried about you. I should be worrying about you, not the other way around, Michael said, squeezing her shoulder. How are you holding up with all this? Emma shrugged. I'm managing. It's hard seeing you and Mom like this. And Jason's taking it even worse than I expected. He feels betrayed, Michael said. We all do, in different ways. But he'll come around eventually. Later, as Michael was preparing to leave, Rebecca approached him in the hallway. Thank you, she said quietly, for what you said at dinner. About moving forward. Michael nodded, not quite meeting her eyes. I meant it. I'm trying. I never wanted to hurt you, she said. You have to believe that. But you did hurt me, Rebecca. You hurt all of us. He sighed. Still, what's done is done. We have to find a way to coexist for Emma and Jason's sake. Rebecca hesitated, then asked, Are you seeing anyone? Emma mentioned you've been going out more. The question caught him off guard. I've had coffee with a woman from work a few times. Nothing serious. He paused. Would it bother you if I was? No, Rebecca said quickly, then more honestly, maybe a little. Which isn't fair, I know. Michael studied his wife's face, her familiar features now somehow belonging to a stranger. No, it's not fair. But feelings rarely are. As he drove back to his empty apartment, Michael reflected on the evening. It had been painful, messy, far from the perfect family Thanksgiving of years past. But they'd made it through. It was a start, a first step toward whatever new reality awaited them all. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Thanks for today, Dad. Love you. A moment later, another text arrived from Jason. Sorry for losing it. Call you tomorrow. Michael felt a weight lift slightly from his shoulders. They were still a family, just a different kind than before. Broken, but not destroyed. And maybe, in time, they could build something new from the pieces. The call came on a Tuesday morning in April, nearly 7 months after Rebecca had filed for divorce. Michael was reviewing quarterly reports in his office overlooking the Chicago River when his assistant buzzed to say his brother Tom was on the line. Dad's gone, Tom said, his voice hoarse. Stroke. In his sleep. Michael closed his eyes, gripping the phone tightly. Their father, Richard Harrington, had been in declining health for years, but the loss still felt sudden, shocking. "I'm coming down," Michael said immediately. "I'll leave in an hour." The drive to Springfield took just over 3 hours, giving Michael too much time to think. His relationship with his father had been complicated. Richard was a hard man who rarely expressed affection, who'd pushed his sons relentlessly toward success. Michael had spent much of his adult life trying to earn approval that never quite came. Tom was waiting on the porch of their childhood home, looking older than his 45 years. The brothers embraced briefly, awkwardly. "Sarah's inside with the funeral director," Tom said, referring to his wife of 15 years. "They're finalizing arrangements." Michael nodded, steeling himself to enter the house. It had been months since his last visit, a tense Sunday dinner where his father had grilled him about the divorce, making no effort to hide his disapproval. What kind of man lets his wife leave? Richard had demanded. "In my day, we worked things out." The memory stung. Michael had left early that night, driving back to Chicago seething with a familiar mix of anger and inadequacy. Inside, the house was unervingly unchanged. The same worn furniture, the same photos on the walls, including several of Rebecca at family gatherings over the years. Sarah hugged Michael tightly, her eyes red-rimmed. "I called your kids," she said. "They're both coming for the funeral." "And Rebecca?" Michael asked before he could stop himself. Sarah and Tom exchanged glances. "We didn't call her," Tom admitted. "Wasn't sure if that would be appropriate now." "She knew Dad for 25 years, Michael said. "She should have the option to come." Even as he said it, Michael wondered at his own reaction. Why was he defending Rebecca's place in the family she'd chosen to leave? The next 2 days passed in a blur of arrangements and reminiscences. Emma and Jason arrived, bringing a fresh wave of emotion. They'd been close to their grandfather despite his gruff exterior. Richard had softened in his role as a grandparent, showing the warmth to them that he'd rarely displayed to his sons. The funeral was well attended. Richard had been a prominent business owner in Springfield before his retirement, respected if not always liked. Michael delivered a eulogy that highlighted his father's work ethic and community contributions, carefully navigating around the more complicated aspects of their relationship. Rebecca arrived just as the service was starting, slipping quietly into a back pew. Michael spotted her as he returned to his seat after the eulogy, their eyes meeting briefly across the chapel. She'd come alone, he noted with a mixture of relief and something else he couldn't quite name. After the burial, family and friends gathered at Richard's house. Michael found himself standing awkwardly in his father's study, surrounded by mementos of a life that had always seemed partially closed to him. "He was proud of you, you know," a voice said from the doorway. Rebecca stood there, elegant in a simple black dress, her hair shorter than when he'd last seen her at Christmas. "He had a funny way of showing it," Michael replied, more sharply than he'd intended. Rebecca entered the room, keeping a careful distance. "That's just how he was. But he bragged about you to everyone. About your success, your integrity." Michael looked at her skeptically. "And you know this how?" "He called me," Rebecca admitted. "After we separated. Wanted to know what went wrong." She gave a small, sad smile. "He assumed it was my fault, of course." "And you set him straight?" "I told him we'd grown apart," she said. "That it wasn't anyone's fault, really." Michael turned away, focusing on the bookshelves lined with his father's collection of history books and business biographies. "That's a convenient way to frame it." Rebecca sighed. "I didn't come here to argue, Michael. I came to pay my respects. Your father was important to me, too." Before Michael could respond, Tom appeared in the doorway. "The lawyer's here," he said. "He wants to meet with us. Family only," he added with an apologetic glance at Rebecca. She nodded. "I should be going anyway. Please tell Emma and Jason I'll call them tomorrow." She hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry for your loss, Michael. Truly." Michael watched her leave, a familiar ache in his chest. Then he followed Tom to the living room, where a gray-haired man in a dark suit was arranging papers on the coffee table. "Mr. Bentley has been Dad's attorney for years," Tom explained. "He has the will." The reading itself was straightforward at first. The family home and most of Richard's assets were to be divided equally between Michael and Tom. There were specific bequests for Emma and Jason, college funds that Richard had established years ago, now to be converted to cash gifts. Then Mr. Bentley cleared his throat. "There is one additional item," he said, removing a sealed envelope from his briefcase. "Your father asked me to deliver this letter to both of you, to be read only after his death. Michael took the envelope with a sense of foreboding. Tom leaned in as he broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. "My sons," Michael read aloud, his voice faltering slightly. "If you're reading this, I've finally done what your mother asked me to do 30 years ago. The truth is, Harrington Manufacturing was never mine to build. It was your mother's inheritance from her father, who didn't trust me to manage it directly." Michael stopped, looking up at Tom in confusion. Their mother had died when they were teenagers, and their father had never remarried. The company that Richard had always presented as his life's achievement, the business he'd eventually sold for millions before retiring, that had come from their mother? "Keep reading," Tom urged. "She insisted I promised to tell you boys the truth when I was gone," Michael continued. "That the business acumen I've taken credit for all these years was largely hers. She was the one with the head for numbers, the strategic mind. I was just the face of the company, the one who could move in the circles that were closed to women in those days." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Their quiet, supportive mother, always in the background of family photos, always deferring to Richard's opinions, had been the true business genius in the family. "There's more," Tom said, pointing to the letter. "I've lived with this secret for 3 decades," Michael read. "Too proud to admit that my success was built on your mother's talent and inheritance. Too ashamed to honor her dying wish until now. I recognize the irony that I only found the courage to tell the truth when I no longer have to face the consequences. Your mother deserved better. Perhaps you both did as well." The letter was signed simply, "Dad." Mr. Bentley cleared his throat again. "There are additional documents," he said, "supporting what your father revealed. Your mother's family papers, the original ownership structure of the company." Michael handed the letter to Tom and walked to the window, looking out at the garden their mother had lovingly tended all those years ago. Everything he thought he knew about his parents' relationship, about his father's accomplishments, was suddenly cast in a different light. "Did you have any idea?" Tom asked. Michael shook his head. "Not a clue. Dad always acted like he built that company from nothing." He turned back to face his brother. "All those lectures about being self-made men, about earning our own way, based on a lie," Tom finished. Later, after Mr. Bentley had gone and the last of the funeral guests had departed, the brothers sat on the back porch with a bottle of their father's good scotch between them. "I keep thinking about Mom," Tom said. "How she must have felt, watching him take all the credit. And yet she stayed," Michael mused. "She never exposed him." "Different generation," Tom suggested. "Different expectations." Michael swirled the amber liquid in his glass, thinking about Rebecca, about their divorce. "I wonder what else we don't know about them. About their marriage." Tom leaned back in his chair. "Makes you think, doesn't it? About our own lives, our own choices." Michael nodded slowly. "Mom chose to stay in a marriage that required her to diminish herself. Rebecca chose to leave one where she felt the same way." He took a long drink. "Maybe neither of them was wrong." "That's surprisingly philosophical of you," Tom observed, "considering how bitter you were at Thanksgiving." "I've had some time to reflect," Michael said, "and a lot of therapy." They sat in companionable silence as twilight settled over the yard. Michael thought about the letter, about his father's belated honesty, about the complicated legacy he'd left behind. There was hurt in the revelation, certainly, but also a strange sort of freedom. The pedestal Michael had spent his life trying to reach had never really existed. "What are you going to do now?" Tom asked eventually. Michael considered the question. "Finish the divorce. Move forward." He paused. "Maybe stop trying to live up to an ideal that was a fiction to begin with." Tom raised his glass. "To Dad," he said. "Flawed, complicated, human." "And to Mom," Michael added, "who deserved more recognition than she got." They drank together as the first stars appeared above them. Two brothers coming to terms with a family history suddenly revealed to be very different than they'd always believed. Summer arrived in Chicago with a relentless heat wave that seemed to mirror the intensity of change in Michael's life. The divorce had been finalized in May, a sterile proceeding that took less than 30 minutes to legally in 25 years of marriage. Michael had expected to feel devastated when it was over, but instead found himself experiencing an unexpected sense of lightness as he left the courthouse. "Dinner tonight?" Elaine asked, falling into step beside him on the sidewalk. Elaine Novak had started as his divorce attorney, referred by a colleague when Michael finally accepted that Rebecca wasn't coming back. Their professional relationship had gradually evolved into friendship over countless meetings discussing asset divisions and settlement terms. Now, with the divorce finalized, the boundaries between them were shifting again. "I should be free around 7, Michael replied. "Just need to finish up some work first." "Perfect. I know a place in Lincoln Park that does amazing tapas." Michael watched her walk away, admiring her confidence. At 49, Elaine had been divorced for nearly a decade and made no secret of how much she preferred her independence. She had a teenage son who lived primarily with his father in Milwaukee, a thriving law practice, and no interest in anything resembling conventional commitment. Michael found her refreshingly straightforward after years of trying to decode Rebecca's subtle dissatisfactions. Back at his office, Michael found himself distracted, his mind drifting from quarterly projections to thoughts of Elaine, then to his conversation with Tom about their parents' marriage. In the 2 months since their father's death, the brothers had spent hours poring over family papers, uncovering more evidence of their mother's unacknowledged business acumen. Letters, notebooks filled with her handwriting, early drafts of company policies, all pointing to a woman whose intelligence and vision had been deliberately obscured. "Your mother was brilliant," their father's former secretary had confirmed when they called her. Everyone at the company knew it, but no one talked about it. That's just how things were back then. The revelation had prompted Michael to re-examine his own marriage, wondering how much of Rebecca's unhappiness had stemmed from similar dynamics. Had he, like his father, been taking credit for shared successes? Had he been dismissing her ideas, her ambitions? His phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Got the job at Vertex Tech. Celebrating at Molly's tonight, if you want to join." Michael smiled, typing back his congratulations and promising to stop by. His relationship with Jason had improved significantly since their confrontation at Thanksgiving. The shared grief of losing their grandfather had softened some of the anger between them, opening space for honest conversations about the divorce and its aftermath. That evening, Michael arrived at the Tapas restaurant to find Elaine already seated at a corner table, a glass of red wine in hand. "You clean up nice, Harrington," she said, appraising his fresh shirt and sport coat. "Almost wouldn't recognize you without those wrinkled suits you wore to our meetings." Michael laughed. "Those were strategic. Thought you might negotiate better terms if you felt sorry for me." "Smart man," Elaine said, raising her glass. "To new chapters." As they shared dishes of patatas bravas and gambas al ajillo, their conversation flowed easily from work to politics to their children. Elaine's son Zach was heading to college in the fall, making her an empty nester for the first time. "It's terrifying and exhilarating," she admitted. "I've been so defined by being his mom for so long, even with shared custody. Now I get to figure out who I am without that primary identity." "I can relate," Michael said. "Though Emma and Jason have been gone for years, I still felt like part of a unit with Rebecca. Being just Michael is disorienting." Elaine studied him over the rim of her glass. "And who is just Michael? What does he want now?" The question caught him off guard. What did he want? For so long, his goals had been defined by family obligations and professional ambitions. Now, at 52, he felt both untethered and newly curious about possibilities he'd never considered. "I'm not entirely sure," he answered honestly. "I'm still figuring that out." Later, they walked along the lakeshore, the Chicago skyline glittering against the night sky. When Elaine took his hand, it felt both natural and startling. The first time he'd held hands with a woman other than Rebecca in nearly 3 decades. "My place isn't far," she said simply. The next morning, Michael woke in an unfamiliar bed, momentarily disoriented before remembering where he was. Elaine was already up, making coffee in the kitchen of her stylish Lakeview condo. "I have a meeting at 9, she said, handing him a mug. "But there's no rush. Stay as long as you like." She kissed him lightly. "Last night was fun. We should do it again sometime." Her casualness was both refreshing and slightly jarring. With Rebecca, intimacy had always been wrapped in layers of emotional meaning. This felt different, enjoyable but uncomplicated. After she left, Michael took his coffee to her balcony, watching the morning commuters hurry along the sidewalks below. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Emma and a text asking him to call her back as soon as possible. Concerned, he dialed her number immediately. "Dad," Emma answered, sounding upset. "Have you talked to Mom recently?" Not since the funeral. What? She and David are engaged. They're getting married in September. Michael sat down heavily, the news hitting him with unexpected force. That's fast. That's what I said. But she says they don't want to wait. They're planning this small ceremony in Michigan, at some vineyard. Emma's voice cracked slightly. She wants me to be her maid of honor. And how do you feel about that? I don't know, Emma admitted. Part of me wants to support her. She seems happy, really happy. But another part feels like it's a betrayal of you, of our family. Michael took a deep breath. Emma, listen to me. You should do it if you want to. Your relationship with your mother is separate from what happened between us. But what about you? Are you okay with this? Was he? Michael searched his feelings and found, to his surprise, that the news didn't devastate him the way it might have 6 months earlier. I'm adjusting to a lot of changes, he said carefully. Your mom finding happiness with someone else is just one of them. After hanging up, Michael finished his coffee and gathered his things. As he was leaving, he paused to look at a photo on Elaine's bookshelf, her and her son at his high school graduation, both beaming at the camera. It struck him how little he knew about her life, about the journey that had brought her to this point. On his way to the office, Michael detoured to the lakefront, parking his car and walking out to the edge of a small pier. The water stretched before him, vast and constantly moving. Like life, he thought. Always changing, impossible to hold on to. His phone buzzed with a text from Elaine. Tonight again? My place or yours? Michael smiled, typing back. Mine. I'll cook. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he added, but first, I'm having drinks with my son to celebrate his new job. You're welcome to join if you want. Her response came quickly. Thanks, but that should be just you two. Family time matters. See you after, though. Family time. The phrase lingered in his mind. His family was changing, reconfiguring into new patterns he was still learning to navigate. But it was still his family, still the most important connection in his life. Michael pocketed his phone and started back toward his car, ready to face whatever came next. The email arrived on a Monday morning in August, its subject line a simple, "We need to talk." Michael recognized the sender immediately, Carter Wilson, his father's longtime business partner and friend. The message was brief, asking Michael to meet him at the Springfield Country Club the following day. No explanation, just an urgency that seemed out of character for the normally measured older man. Michael cleared his schedule and made the drive down to Springfield, curiosity mixing with apprehension. He hadn't seen Carter since the funeral, though they'd exchanged a few texts in the intervening months. Michael had always liked the man, who'd been something of an uncle figure throughout his childhood. The country club was nearly empty on a Tuesday afternoon, its golf course shimmering under the late summer sun. Carter was waiting on the terrace, his once robust frame now diminished by age, his trademark bow tie slightly askew. Michael, he said, standing to shake hands. Thank you for coming on such short notice. They exchanged pleasantries over iced tea, catching up on Michael's children and Carter's grandchildren, until Michael finally prompted. Your email sounded important. Carter nodded, his expression grave. It is. It's about your father's estate. He removed a thick manila envelope from his briefcase. There are some financial issues you and Tom should be aware of. Michael frowned. What kind of issues? The will seemed straightforward. The will, yes. Carter passed him the envelope. But not everything was included in the will. He paused. Richard made some investments in recent years. High-risk ventures that, well, didn't pan out. Michael opened the envelope, scanning the documents inside. As he read, his confusion turned to disbelief, then to anger. His father had leveraged the family home, the home Tom and his family were currently living in, against a series of increasingly desperate business loans. The most recent dating just 2 months before his death. He was underwater, Michael said flatly. Why didn't he say anything? Carter looked uncomfortable. Pride, I suspect. He couldn't admit he'd made poor decisions. He hesitated. After your mother died, Richard was never quite the same. The business success he'd claimed as his own began to slip away, revealing the truth she'd always kept hidden. So he gambled what was left trying to prove himself, Michael concluded. The realization stung. His father had been living a lie until the very end. Unfortunately, yes, Carter said. I tried to talk him out of these investments, but he was determined to leave a legacy that was truly his own. Michael continued through the paperwork, the full extent of the financial disaster becoming clear. The family home would need to be sold to cover the debts. The inheritance that Michael and Tom had expected would barely exist after everything was settled. Does Tom know about this yet? Michael asked. Carter shook his head. I thought it best to tell you first. You always had a better head for business. That evening, Michael sat in his hotel room, staring at his phone, dreading the call he needed to make. Tom had moved his family into their father's house shortly after the funeral, planning to renovate and make it their permanent home. Now he would be forced to leave, to explain to his wife and teenage daughters that their security was built on quicksand. When Michael finally dialed, Tom's initial disbelief quickly gave way to fury. He knew he was sick, Tom said, his voice rising. He knew he probably didn't have much time left. How could he do this to us? The same way he took credit for Mom's business acumen, Michael said quietly. He couldn't face the truth about himself. Sarah's going to be devastated, Tom said. We just enrolled the girls in the local school. Started painting rooms. He paused. What am I supposed to tell them? The truth, Michael suggested. As much as is appropriate. And that we'll figure it out together. After hanging up, Michael poured himself a bourbon from the minibar and moved to the window, looking out at the Springfield skyline. His phone buzzed with a text from Elaine. How's the mysterious meeting? Should I be jealous? He smiled despite himself. Their relationship had evolved over the past month into something that defied easy categorization. More than casual dating, less than committed partnership. They each maintained their separate homes, but spent most nights together. Elaine continued to insist she had no interest in marriage or cohabitation, which suited Michael fine. He was still learning how to be on his own. Family financial drama, he texted back. Nothing exciting. Home tomorrow. A moment later, his phone rang. Not Elaine but Emma. Dad, I need your advice, she said, skipping any greeting. Mom wants to have a family dinner tomorrow to introduce David's parents. Jason's refusing to go. Michael sighed, setting down his drink. Has he talked to your mother about why? He says it's too much too soon. That she's trying to force this new family on us without giving us time to adjust. Emma sounded torn. I understand how he feels, but I also don't want to hurt Mom's feelings. What do you want to do? Michael asked. I want everyone to get along, Emma said, frustration evident in her voice. I want to go to this dinner without feeling like I'm betraying you. I want Jason to stop being so angry all the time. Emma, Michael said gently, you're not betraying me by having a relationship with David or his family. And Jason's feelings are his own to work through. He paused. Have you told your mother how you feel about this dinner? Not really, Emma admitted. I don't want to add to her stress. She's been so focused on wedding plans. Maybe that's part of the problem, Michael suggested. Everyone walking on eggshells instead of being honest about what they need. The silence on the other end suggested his words had struck home. Thanks, Dad, Emma said finally. I'll talk to both of them. She hesitated. How are you doing with all this? Mom getting married again? Michael considered the question. I'm doing better than I expected. The divorce was hard, but it also forced me to look at some truths I'd been avoiding. He thought about the revelations about his father, about the family pattern of hiding difficult realities. Sometimes painful honesty is better than comfortable lies. After hanging up, Michael returned to the financial documents, looking for any possible solution that wouldn't require Tom's family to uproot their lives. An idea began to form, not ideal, but potentially workable. He'd need to liquidate some of his own investments, possibly take out a loan against his condo. It would mean postponing his own retirement by several years, but it might allow Tom to keep the house. The next morning, before driving back to Chicago, Michael met with his father's banker to explore options. The numbers were sobering, but not entirely hopeless. With some creative financial maneuvering, they might be able to satisfy the creditors while keeping the house and the family. Your father would have appreciated this, the banker commented. He always spoke highly of your business sense. Michael nodded absently, his mind on the irony of using his own financial stability to clean up his father's mess. In doing so, was he enabling the same kind of deception his father had practiced? Or was he breaking the cycle by facing the problem openly, by acknowledging the reality of the situation rather than hiding it? He called Tom from the road. I think I have a solution, he said. But we need to be completely transparent about everything from now on. No more family secrets. They spoke for nearly an hour, weighing options, confronting difficult truths. By the time Michael reached Chicago, they had the outline of a plan. one that would require sacrifice from both of them, but would keep Tom's family from losing their home. As he pulled into his parking garage, Michael spotted Elaine waiting by the elevator, takeout bags in hand. "Thought you might be hungry after your drive," she said, kissing him hello. "Want to tell me about this family drama?" Inside his apartment, over containers of Thai food, Michael explained the situation, his father's financial deception, the threatened loss of the family home, his plan to help Tom. "That's a significant financial commitment," Elaine observed. "You're essentially postponing your own goals for your brother's family." "They need it more than I do," Michael said simply. Elaine studied him with newfound curiosity. "You've changed since I first met you, you know. The man who walked into my office 6 months ago was angry, defensive, looking for someone to blame. I had a good attorney," Michael joked. "It's more than that." She set down her fork. "You've stopped trying to control everything. Started accepting reality as it is, not as you wish it were." Her observation struck him as profoundly true. Somewhere along the way, amid all the painful revelations and adjustments, he'd found a new kind of peace. Not the false stability of denial, but the authentic calm that comes from facing truth directly. "Speaking of reality," Elaine said, reaching for her wine, "there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about. An opportunity in New York. A partnership at a firm there." Michael felt a flicker of surprise, followed by a complex mix of emotions. "You're considering it?" "I am," she said. "It's a significant step up professionally. Zach's off to college, so my ties here are fewer." She met his eyes directly. "I wanted you to know because I value what we have. But I also need to be clear that this relationship, wonderful as it is, wouldn't be a factor in my decision." A few months earlier, her words might have felt like rejection. Now, Michael found himself admiring her clarity, her commitment to her own path. "When would you decide?" "They need an answer by October." "And if you take it?" Elaine shrugged. "We see what happens. Maybe we visit each other. Maybe we don't. Maybe we enjoy what we have now without needing guarantees about the future." Michael nodded slowly, recognizing the wisdom in her approach. "I think I can live with that uncertainty." "Good," she said, smiling. "Because life rarely offers guarantees anyway." Later, as they lay in bed, Michael's phone lit up with a text from Emma. "Had an honest talk with Mom and Jason. Dinner postponed until we're all ready. Thank you for the advice." Michael showed Elaine the message. "Small victories," he said. "Family healing takes time," she observed, settling against his shoulder. "Honesty is just the first step, but an essential one," Michael replied, thinking of his father's lifelong deceptions, of Rebecca's hidden unhappiness, of his own reluctance to face uncomfortable truths. "Without it, you're just building on sand." October painted the Chicago shoreline in brilliant reds and golds as Michael jogged along the lakefront path, his breath visible in the crisp morning air. At 52, he'd taken up running as part of the many changes in his life over the past year. 3 miles, 3 times a week, a small commitment to himself that had become an unexpected source of clarity. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Slowing to a walk, he checked the screen to find a message from Rebecca. "Can we meet for coffee this week? Need to discuss something." The request was unusual. Since finalizing their divorce 6 months earlier, their communication had been limited to occasional texts about the children or brief encounters at family events. Rebecca had postponed her wedding to David, taking more time to blend the families, according to Emma. But they were still together, still planning a future that no longer included Michael. He texted back, suggesting tomorrow afternoon at a neutral cafe halfway between their respective neighborhoods. Her reply came quickly. "Perfect. Thank you." That evening, Elaine flew to New York for her final interview with the law firm. They'd spent the previous night discussing what her potential move would mean for their relationship. "I don't believe in long-distance relationships," she had said frankly. "They rarely work, and I don't want to set us up for disappointment." "So if you take the job, this ends?" Michael had asked, surprised by how calmly he could contemplate the possibility. "This phase ends," Elaine corrected. "What comes next, if anything, would be different. No promises, no expectations." She had touched his face gently. "But I'm glad we had this time together." Now, as Michael prepared a solitary dinner, he reflected on how much had changed in a year. His marriage had ended. His father had died, leaving behind complicated truths and financial chaos. He'd found an unexpected connection with Elaine that might soon shift into something else entirely. Through it all, He had discovered a resilience he hadn't known he possessed, a capacity to absorb change and disappointment without being destroyed by them. The pain was still real, but it no longer defined him. The next day, Michael arrived at the cafe early, choosing a quiet corner table. He spotted Rebecca as soon as she entered, her familiar silhouette, the way she scanned the room, the slight tilt of her head as she caught sight of him. For a moment, the old ache returned, but it passed quickly. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, settling into the chair across from him. She looked good, rested, her hair styled differently than when they were together, subtle makeup enhancing her features. "Of course," Michael replied. "Everything okay?" Rebecca nodded, fidgeting slightly with her coffee cup. "Yes, mostly. David and I are doing well. The wedding is back on for spring. I heard. Emma mentioned it." An awkward silence fell between them, the weight of their shared history both connecting and separating them. "I wanted to talk to you about the house," Rebecca said finally. "Our house." The buyer fell through. Michael raised his eyebrows in surprise. The suburban Chicago home they'd shared for most of their marriage had been on the market for months, with a sale pending for the past 6 weeks. The proceeds were to be split between them as part of their settlement. "What happened?" "Financing issues, apparently." Rebecca sighed. "The realtor thinks we should lower the price if we want a quick sale in this market." Michael considered this. The housing market had cooled significantly in recent months, making their spacious family home in the suburbs a harder sell than anticipated. "And you want my opinion on that?" "Actually," Rebecca hesitated, "I've been thinking about buying your half." The proposal caught him off guard. "You want to move back in?" "What about David's place?" "We've been talking about it," she explained. "His condo is too small for when his kids visit. And honestly, I miss the garden, the neighborhood." She met his eyes directly. "It's not about trying to reclaim the past. It's practical. And maybe there's some sentimental value too." Michael nodded slowly, processing the idea. The thought of Rebecca and David living in the home where he'd raised his children felt strange, but not as painful as it might have once been. "I need to have it properly appraised," he said finally. "Make sure the price is fair." "Of course," she agreed quickly. "I've already spoken to my bank about financing." They spent the next hour discussing practical details, timelines, paperwork, the logistics of transferring ownership. The conversation was easier than Michael had expected, marked by a newfound civility that felt like progress. As they prepared to leave, Rebecca paused. "There's something else I wanted to say." She took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about why our marriage ended. Not just the surface reasons, but the deeper patterns." Michael waited, curious. "My therapist helped me see that I had stopped communicating what I needed years ago," she continued. "Instead of telling you when I felt invisible or unheard, I retreated. Built a separate life. That wasn't fair to you." "I could have paid more attention," Michael acknowledged. "Noticed the changes." Rebecca smiled sadly. "We both contributed to what happened. I just wanted you to know that I recognize my part in it." "Thank you for that," Michael said, genuinely touched by her insight. "It helps." As they walked to their cars, Rebecca asked, "How are things with Elaine?" "Emma mentioned you've been seeing her." "Good," Michael said, "though she's considering a job in New York. And if she takes it." He shrugged. "Then we figure out what comes next. Or we don't." The simplicity of this approach still surprised him. This willingness to let things unfold without needing to control the outcome. Rebecca studied him with curious eyes. "You've changed." "So have you," he replied. The following weekend brought Jason home for an unexpected visit. He arrived at Michael's condo on Saturday morning, duffel bag in hand, looking tired but determined. "Can I crash here for a few days?" he asked. "Need a break from the city." Michael welcomed him in, sensing there was more to the visit than a simple desire for a change of scenery. They ordered pizza and watched a baseball game, the easy rhythms of father-son companionship requiring no explanations or deep conversations. It wasn't until Sunday morning, as they sat on Michael's balcony drinking coffee, that Jason finally spoke about what was on his mind. "I've been thinking about what you said at Thanksgiving," he began. "About accepting change instead of fighting it." Michael nodded, remembering their heated exchange. "I was so angry at Mom," Jason continued, "for breaking up our family, for moving on with David." He stared into his coffee cup. "But I realized I was really angry about something else." "What's that?" "That nothing is permanent," Jason said simply. "Not even the things that seem most solid, like family." Michael recognized the fear behind his son's words. the same fear he himself had grappled with over the past year. Change doesn't have to mean loss, he said carefully. Sometimes it just means rearrangement. Jason smiled slightly at the awkward phrasing. Deep, Dad. I'm working on it, Michael chuckled. The point is, your mother and I aren't together anymore, but we're still your parents. That hasn't changed. The form of our family has shifted, but the substance remains. I'm going to Mom's wedding, Jason announced suddenly. I told her yesterday. Michael felt a surge of pride. That's good. She'll be happy. Will it be weird for you? Jason asked, knowing we're all there while you're not. A little, Michael admitted. But that's part of the new arrangement. Your mom and I have separate lives now, but we still share you and Emma. He paused. Speaking of your sister, how is she handling all this? Better than me, Jason said with a rueful smile. She's like a family diplomat these days, making sure everyone feels included, that no one's feelings get hurt. She shouldn't have to carry that burden, Michael said. I think she actually likes it, Jason observed. Gives her a role, a way to keep everyone connected. Later that day, as they were preparing dinner, Michael received a text from Elaine. Took the job. Starting January 1st. Can we talk tonight? Jason noticed his father's expression. Everything okay? Yeah, Michael said, surprised to find it was true. A friend got a job she really wanted. In New York. The lawyer lady? Jason asked. Emma had obviously been sharing details. That's a bummer. I liked her. Me too, Michael said. But it's a great opportunity for her. Jason studied him curiously. You don't seem that upset. Michael considered this. I'm disappointed, he acknowledged. But also happy for her. Life rarely follows the path you expect. That's definitely been my experience this year, Jason agreed. They worked together at the stove, the simple act of preparing a meal creating a space for conversation that flowed more easily than it had in months. Jason talked about his new job, about a woman he'd started dating, about his tentative plans to go back to school for a master's degree. Michael listened, offering advice only when asked, aware of the shifting dynamic between them, no longer simply father and son, but two adults navigating life's complexities together. After dinner, Michael excused himself to call Elaine. Their conversation was bittersweet but honest, acknowledgement of what they'd meant to each other, coupled with clear-eyed acceptance of what came next. We'll stay in touch, she promised. And who knows what the future holds? No guarantees, he echoed their earlier conversation. No guarantees, she agreed. Just possibilities. When Michael returned to the living room, he found Jason looking through an old family photo album he'd pulled from a bookshelf. Remember this trip? Jason asked, pointing to a picture of the four of them on a beach in Florida, sunburned and smiling. Mom got stung by a jellyfish, and you carried her all the way back to the hotel. I remember, Michael said, smiling at the memory. She wouldn't let me near her leg with the vinegar. Said she'd rather suffer than smell like a salad. They laughed together, turning pages, revisiting moments from their shared past. There was sadness in the reminiscence, but also appreciation for what had been, acceptance of what now was. Do you ever wish you and Mom could work things out? Jason asked. Suddenly. Get back together? Michael thought about the question, about Rebecca's transformed life with David, about his own journey over the past year. No, he said honestly. What we had was important, and it gave me you and Emma, the best parts of my life. But your mother and I have both changed. We're different people now. Jason nodded slowly. I think I'm finally okay with that. Later, after Jason had gone to bed, Michael stepped out onto his balcony, looking at the Chicago skyline glittering against the night sky. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Just heard from Jason. So glad you two are talking. Love you, Dad. Michael smiled, typing back his response. Then he set his phone aside and stood in the cool autumn air, taking in the vastness of the city before him. The past year had brought loss and revelation, pain and growth. He had said goodbye to his marriage, to his father, to illusions about his family history. Soon, he would say goodbye to Elaine, at least in her current role in his life. Yet somehow, he felt not diminished but expanded by these endings. Each loss had created space for new understanding, new connections, new possibilities. The future remained unwritten, full of potential changes that would require him to adapt yet again. But for the first time in as long as he could remember, the uncertainty didn't frighten him. It felt, strangely enough, like freedom.